Good evening. Welcome to the forum for the Iowa City Community School District Bond Issue sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Johnson County. My name is Galen Wohlbetter. I am a member of the League. The League is dedicated to educating voters on political and ballot issues. We encouraged informed citizen participation in government. Membership is open to both men and women age 16 or older. We invite you to join us. There are brochures about the League and about our website, Vote 411, on the table in the entry hall. We encourage our members as individuals, as we encourage each of you to get involved in your community. We also encourage you to vote on or before September 12th. The forum is being live streamed by the Press Citizen and filmed by Iowa City Channel 4. Tonight we have representatives from One Community, One Bond supporting the bond issue, and from Vote No on September 12th opposing the bond. The views expressed here are those of the speakers. Each speaker will introduce herself and give a 2-minute statement supporting her position on the board. By the luck of the draw, we will begin with One Community, One Bond.
Good evening. My name is Kate Moreland. I'm a parent and a community member. I've lived in the Iowa City area for nearly 20 years. My husband and I have 3 children. 2 of them attend West High, and our youngest is at Weber Elementary. I am part of the One Community, One Bond committee. Our committee is comprised of parents, educators, and community members from throughout the district with equal representation from all of the high school attendance zones. We're all committed to ensure that we have equitable learning environments for all the students of the district. I previously worked for the Iowa City Community Schools and have had the opportunity to spend time in all of our schools over the years. And I've witnessed firsthand the deferred maintenance, inaccessibility, and overcrowding issues of the district. There is a great discrepancy in the health, safety, and ADA accessibility in our buildings. My kids have spent several years in temporaries at both elementary and high school. They've watched classmates faint from the heat in the classroom. We know students at Horace Mann and parents are unable to go beyond the first floor if they have any physical disability. I'm currently working as Vice President for Iowa City Area Development Group. Our organization works to attract businesses and people to our community. I meet with new residents weekly, and I can tell you that the quality of public schools are the #1 issue people consider when they are exploring whether or not to relocate. All the issues I've mentioned affect the learning and experience of our students and teachers. For all these reasons, I believe that this vote is critical for the future of our community.
Thank you. Mary Kate Pilcher-Hayek.
Hello. As she said, I'm Mary Kate Pilcher-Hayek. I have 3 children at Hoover Elementary. They're ages 6, 8, and 10. I work at a downtown law firm, and before I was a lawyer, I was a high school teacher. Now I'll just dig in. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for being here, because although I know a lot of us have opinions that are different from the other, I think just by being here, we are showing that we care about public schools, which is so important to everyone in the room, obviously. Public education, especially right now, is being undermined and underfunded on a federal and state level. Never has there been a greater need for our community to support our local public schools. We can do this by passing the bond, which pays for the Facilities Master Plan. I'm going to call it the FMP, the Facilities Master Plan. The 10-year plan is the result of our community's hard work and difficult choices. This bond pays for the final 20 projects on that FMP. While the FMP is not perfect, it is the only plan that addresses our district's urgent facility needs. By urgent facility needs, I'm talking about basic needs, like a place for the students to eat lunch, or instead of eating on the floor, a place for them to play, a place for them to have art class, music class, a place for us to bring vocational tech opportunities back to our campuses, and other essential needs that have not been met for decades. The comprehensive upgrades make sure that it doesn't matter where you live or how much money you have. Your school facility will be comparable to any other school in the district. And this is not the case right now. If you have visited your local schools, you know what I'm saying. Finally, as you listen to this debate, please look for practical solutions, not sound bites or red herrings. We won't have time to get into all of the issues with detail. If you feel like a thorough answer was not given, please continue to do what you did tonight and demand the details. Thank you.
Vote no. First speaker, Mary Murphy.
Good evening. My name is Mary Murphy, and I actually was born in Iowa City when my mother was formerly a school teacher here in the district. My father went to law school here. I followed him to law school here. I am admitted to practice law in Iowa and Illinois, was a corporate lawyer and then a manager for John Deere Insurance Company in Moline for many years, and now teach part-time at the University of Iowa. I do have 5 children, 2 of whom have recently graduated from City High. 3 of my children attended Northwest Junior High. I live in the Lincoln neighborhood. My youngest is at Regina. So I have experience with at least 3 of the schools across the district, and I value public education. As I said, my mother was a teacher. My mother-in-law was a teacher. I look at this ballot language, and I left you all a copy of it on the table outside, and what I see is incredibly vague ballot language. There is no dollar amount allocated to specific schools. There is no requirement that a renovation be historic. What we have is a cost of $191.525 million that we are going to pay on until the year 2042 with interest on top of that. We have a board that is not unified. Indeed, we did not even have a unified vote to approve the bond ballot language. Further, we have a superintendent who has consulted while he has been here. I would prefer to see a superintendent who devotes his full efforts to the district. We know our enrollment projections aren't valid long-term. If we had a reasonable bond that did our most important projects first, like air conditioning, I would be happy to vote for it. I see some of the same problems with the the Kirkwood bond ballot language, yet I'm willing to support the Kirkwood community education bond. This reminds me of an episode of House Hunters where the couple picks the most expensive house.
Martha Hempel.
Hi, my name is Martha Hampel. I have 3 children, 1 in junior high at Southeast Junior High, and 2 little ones that are not in school yet. I've been in Iowa City for 17 years. The school district is very important to me. Public education is very important to me. This issue comes down to trust. It's a lot of money, and a lot of money being put in the hands of a district administration that I frankly don't trust for many reasons. The underlying philosophy of the facilities master plan that pushes for large schools and insists on the closure of neighborhood schools like Hoover Elementary. The school board's decision to silence the 2,300 residents who signed a petition to put the question of Hoover's demolition on the ballot. The proven culture of intimidation and retaliation that has permeated our school district. The school board's insistence on a negative judgment policy, which intimidates parents and school board members from speaking out on important issues. The school district's misuse of plywood boxes called seclusion rooms. I'm also very concerned about the vague ballot language. For example, the campaign or the district in favor of the bond is promising Lincoln Elementary additions, when in fact the bond only promises renovations, opposed to other schools that are listed on the bond that promise additions and uses that word. So I question whether Lincoln Elementary would actually end up with an addition paid for with this bond. There are some other discrepancies with the bond language, which hopefully we could get to at another time. That's all my time. Thanks.
Thank you all for your opening remarks. We will now open the microphone to questions from our in-house audience, beginning with a question from the League. In order to maximize the number of questions from audience members, you will be timed. You have 1 minute to state your question. Please speak directly into the microphone. If after 1 minute you've not stated your question, I will prompt you to do so. Please be respectful. As you come to the microphone, please introduce yourself, and if you are representing an organization, tell us which one. If you have a second question, please wait until the others have had a chance to ask theirs. Each side has 2 minutes to respond. Out of respect for all present, please do not interrupt the speakers. The first question is from the League of Women Voters, and then we are opening it up to the audience. The League's question is, how do you envision the school district proceeding with the needs outlined if the bond issue does not pass? Either side can go first. That doesn't matter.
Are you okay with me responding?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
What I would say to you is the Iowa Code provides that a school board can go back to the electorate within at the end of a 6-month period. It can ask for a more reasonable bond. That might force our school board to actually work together to get a reasonable bond. We could plan for the projects. If you look out on the table, I had the district assumptions written out in a spreadsheet so you can see what projects the district has proposed going first. There will be a series of 4 bond issues as projected now. Each school won't get all its money all at once. It will come in a series of projects. There's also the strong possibility that the sales tax will be extended. That would provide, according to the district's own paperwork, an additional $440 million to the district. One of the benefits, I don't personally like a sales tax, but one of the benefits is the state did retain a little bit of that sales tax money for property and tax relief to some very needy districts. I think it's viewed more as an infrastructure bill than a jobs bill. So there are a number of things the district can do, starting with get the school board to work together to come up with a reasonable bond and make sure that we address our most needy projects first. I am somewhat disturbed that what we have not seen is a district that addresses its primary needs first, its secondary needs second, and its tertiary needs third. They could have started with air conditioning. After all, we air conditioned Hoover, a school we're planning on tearing down. Thank you.
So to respond, what I said at the opening was that I really want everyone to think practically about this, and I don't think it is practical to think that what took 5 years for our community to put together could be done in 6 months or in a year's time. So while, in fact, the Iowa Code permits it, I don't think it's a practical solution. And it wasn't the board that came up with that plan. It was thousands of people spending thousands of hours, including me. I was at those meetings, putting together that plan. So again, I think it's an oversimplification to suggest that if this doesn't work, we can start from scratch and put something new together in a short time period. The other thing I would respond to is to suggest that air conditioning is the most important thing. I wonder about ADA accessibility. If you don't attend a school that shows you this, you know that there are schools where you can't enter the building or get beyond the basement floor because there's no ADA accessibility. I would think that it's a pretty fair argument to say that that's as important as air conditioning and possibly more important than air conditioning. But again, these are the considerations we spent 5 years discussing. We spent 5 years figuring out how to prioritize all of these projects. And I again said it wasn't easy and it's not perfect, but it's comprehensive and it gets the job done. Do you have anything to add to that?
I would just add we'll have 4 new board members. That's a tall order to ask 4 new board members to come up with a new plan in 6 months. And I think that there's a real risk in fracturing our communities when we try to fight over limited resources or try to reallocate priorities when we have some certainty with the facility master plan.
Okay, thank you. Now we're ready for audience questions. If you would line up in front of the microphone if anybody has a question for our panel.
My name is Frank Zlotnick. I live in southwest Iowa City. My question relates to the payment of the bond. I really read two things. I read the brochure from the pro folks who talk about, it seems to me, $51 a month or per year on a $100,000 home. And then I read in the Press Citizen where it says that that's a $98 charge on a $100,000 tax home. And so where's the truth? What is going to be the cost of this bond?
I would be happy to address that. First of all, we don't know what the cost of the bond is going to be. It's going to depend on a lot of things, such as what the interest rates are, how we structure the bonds, what denominations are sold, what the market's like at the time they're sold, what the bond underwriting costs are, et cetera. However, in its certified budget packet, information packet, which just to backtrack a little, the board obviously votes on the tax rate. It's the board that sets the tax rate and approves the certified budget. The district was using a figure of 1.95033 for the first year of the bond. Now, originally the figure was over $2 when they anticipated issuing 5 separate series of bonds. So it won't just be we get the money all at once. There are some IRS spending limitations. The money has to be spent within I think a 2-year period to meet those arbitrage requirements. Having said that, if we look at 1.95033 as what the district is legally reporting right now, if you have a $100,000 house, you're looking at, when we isolate the cost of the bond, a dollar figure of $101.58. Now, for people who are very low-income seniors, some figure under $23,000 a year, there is a credit for those property taxes, but this bond cost is going to particularly hit people on a fixed income who don't qualify for a property tax credit, who don't itemize on their tax returns. So I would count on it costing you about twice whatever it is the district is publicizing as the figure. Thank you.
I don't know how to respond to that other than to say I too am looking at the numbers, and we were given several iterations of the information from the district, and the $425 a month is based on 0% population growth. So it's the most conservative number it could have given us. What that means is the amount will be less than what number you're seeing. So it sounds like Mary has some different information than I have. But what I can tell you is that I'm looking at it, and I don't know why she thinks it's twice as much. What I can tell you for a fact is that these projects will only get more expensive. So, and I've heard no one say which projects to pull. So the time to do these is now, because the longer we wait, the more expensive they get.
And I would just add that we have significant, while we have taxes are significant, and it's certainly something we have to be mindful of. We have parents missing work when we are releasing for heat. We have people losing income and trying to figure out childcare. There are real consequences for keeping the status quo as well, a financial burden on families, in addition to just not providing the equitable learning environments that they deserve.
Thank you. Just so to clarify, each side has 2 minutes. You can use your whole time or not. Okay. Next question, please.
We're not voting on the FMP. We're voting on the bond language. That is all that we're voting on. Does the bond language guarantee that every single project, as it is today, on the FMP of today, will be completed with this bond money? Does the bond guarantee that no schools will be closed with those renovations and additions eliminated in order to be used towards the new schools or the purchase of land for new schools? Does this bond language guarantee that every one of these projects will actually be completed as of today?
Thank you for that question, and I think you forgot to introduce yourself.
Julie Van Dyke, Liberty Township, Hills Elementary, the only school that I know of that's not mentioned in the bond language.
So taking a look at the FMP and the ballot language, and I hope that you've all had a chance to look at this and make sure you look at it closely. This is the facilities master plan. It includes the projects that are already completed and the 20 projects that are bond dependent. Those 20 projects are listed chronologically on the ballot, and they include the exact language from the FMP as far as how it reads at the top of this page. Now, there's a narrative for each one of those projects, but we can't fit all of that on the ballot. As far as whether or not we should be confident that the projects will be completed, so far, every single project has been completed on time and under budget. And that's pretty significant considering there has been a turnover of 16 board members since we got started. So if there's one thing we can count on, it's the completion of this FMP.
And I think we've created an expectation from the public, from families that are counting on this. And I think the district has proven, when it comes to facilities, that they are capable with the board's work of making sure that these projects are completed.
I'll start. No, we are not voting on the facilities master plan. You're right, we're voting on the ballot language. The ballot language is vague. Anyone with even an introductory course knowledge of basic reasoning can see the gaps in the ballot language. Even just last night at the Iowa City school board meeting, we could see the frustration among the school board members with the district administration's decisions regarding the addition to Lincoln Elementary. The plans they came to the school board with were 30 to 40% over budget. So we're kind of worried, what's going to happen when these 20 projects come 20 to 30% over budget over and over. What about the items at the end of the facilities master plan? Are those going to be funded? How are we going to spread this money around? What schools are going to lose out?
Martha's right. Could the district have written ballot language that actually was very specific, included dollar amounts, put street addresses or legal descriptions for schools? And the answer is yes. I actually looked in the Iowa Code and at the Secretary of State's office for election information and ballot information. There is no requirement that a ballot be one page. You can use a summary in Iowa and post it in the ballot box. We could have more specific language in front of us to vote on. We are not voting on the FMP. We are voting on only the bond ballot language. I left a copy of it out for you all to read. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm the evil Joseph Dobrian, and I'm undecided on this matter at present. One thing that does concern me is that this is a very large bond issue that will be paid out over a great many years. I probably won't be around to see it mature. And since it is coming out, as you said, in several pieces, I'm wondering what is the case for voting this down, and because it's going to be hard to pass another bond issue after this one, and then voting for several smaller, more articulated bond issues over the next few years.
Joseph, I share that concern, and I think when we look at our district, we're very unique having 5 municipalities in one school district. But it creates some challenges. We have areas that are growing very quickly, we have new areas, and I'm concerned that beyond just bond fatigue over the next several years, we will be continuing these discussions about facilities. And that means we will not be talking about education. We will not be addressing many of the issues that we know our district faces, the achievement gap, and various things that is special education and other things that are important issues. So if we spend the next decade attempting to pass bond after bond and dividing our communities over how to prioritize these projects, I think we really run the risk of changing the course of conversation and pitting one community against another. So I appreciate that question. I think that's a real concern, and that's really why this committee is made up of people from all over the district. We would like to see certainty. We'd like to know what is happening so that we can change the conversation to what do we need for our students, what are the best educational practices, how can we support our teachers with the changes at the state level. There are not a shortage of issues for us to discuss, but creating bond after bond after bond will create some real strain, I think, on our communities.
Which brings it back to my plea for you to be practical, and whether you think it is really a practical option to put 3 or 4 smaller bonds in front of this community to vote in general elections starting at our next election. And in each one of those bonds to figure out how to get everyone in the community to vote for them when we can't make a comprehensive bond like the one currently on the ballot.
Well, having shared an office with a rhetoric instructor or professor, I can tell you there are never just 2 sides to any issue, and it's not a choice between this bond and several small bonds or this bond and nothing. We can start with a reasonably sized bond. We can see if the district does what it says it's going to do, if it fulfills its promises. If it does, we are a community that supports public education. I would be happy to vote for a reasonable sized bond. I think one piece we should have a discussion as a community is this facilities arms race we have, where each school has to have a gym that's exactly like another, a yard that's exactly like another. I think we have a number of options. I think a board would be incredibly motivated to come back to us with a reasonable bond behind which the community could unify. I would also say to you, I firmly believe, having followed this issue meticulously, that what we will see is the legislature passing the penny sales tax for schools. It's about the only way rural schools can actually get enough money to build the infrastructure that they need. And there is support for it in the legislature. It does provide a little bit of property tax relief. So I think personally it's viewed more as a jobs bill, and it brings money into a lot of communities.
I think what we need to worry about more than voter fatigue is the community's bank accounts fatigue. We're putting ourselves, our future selves, at a disadvantage here. This is a lot of money, and we will realize shortly, if this is passed, that there have been, that the district has overcompensated in some areas and underestimated needs and ignored needs in areas such as Hills Elementary. And the district, the voters, it's hard to imagine that they would fill in the gaps by voting for another smaller bond later.
Hi, I'm Kathy Welsh, and I also have concerns if the bond is broken up that we would lose district-wide support. It's been mentioned here tonight that air conditioning is a priority. I talked to 2 community members last night who didn't have it when they went to school, and they don't feel that it is a priority. So my concern is that if the bond is broken up, we lose support from across the school district. And furthermore, who decides the neediest projects, and how would you see that process playing out, given that the current plan took 5 years and, countless hours?
Well, I think we would be back to square one. And I don't know that there's any way around that, because with 20 projects, all pressing and all necessary, I think we would have to bring people back together and try to determine what goes first, who's more valuable, what schools should come first. And I think there's, again, a risk in that. As you know, we're the 5th largest district in the state. We're 10th when it comes to tax rate of the largest 10 districts. When I hope this bond passes, we will still be 10th. So we have a lot of catching up to do. Districts from all over the state have made improvements to their older buildings. Sioux City, Dubuque, Ankeny, Des Moines. We have a lot of catching up to do. This is not extras. These are not things that are frivolous. And I think that part of the argument that we can just start all over again, figure it out, we'll be back to you in a couple months with a new answer, is really not a reasonable response to this. And so I think the process, while I was there for the first one, and it was taxing, it was long, we had students that now are graduating that I remember sitting around the table. My daughter was in 5th grade at the time. She'll graduate without air conditioning. So time moves quickly. Our kids can't wait. There is a sense of urgency to this, and starting over, we will not respond to that urgency.
To that point, the delay, as we've discussed, will also cause far more strain on everyone's bank account than if we pass this now.
Well, with regard to strain on everyone's bank account, I would say that a school district that undertakes construction at the same time the university is recovering from flood and spending hundreds of millions of dollars has increased construction demand tremendously. And we might actually find inflation slowing down now that we're done with many of our flood relief efforts. If you look at how the district proposes to issue bonds, and the numbers are essentially meaningless since they're not actually in the bond ballot language, but if you look at and consider it's going to propose, or it has proposed to issue bonds 4 separate times, and you look at how the money is proposed to be distributed, assuming they don't run out, that projects don't go over budget, and there have been numerous change orders. I left you a handout showing some of the changes from the district. Then we could start with the projects that are on the district, or we can just all rely on our good sense to elect people who have the good sense to go back and use the work that's already been done. We can build on what's already been done. The proposed way that the district is going to issue bonds, the series of 4, the 4th one isn't even going to be issued until the year 2022. You've got a school like Kirkwood that waits until the very end to get its stuff. I think we should all worry that we're requiring not just this generation to pay for this bond, but I would be obligating my children also if they're going to stay in Iowa City. Want to add to that?
Okay, thank you. Next question.
My name's Sue, excuse me, my name's Sue Dvorsky, and I taught for almost 35 years in the district. I taught at Southeast and Hoover and Twain. Our children graduated from West High, proud West High Trojans, after Northwest and Coralville Central. So I have a lot of familiarity with the issues here, and one of the questions I've got, and I've seen it asserted multiple times by some of my friends who are saying no, and Mary, you just talked about it twice. I'm really genuinely wondering, where are you getting the assertion that the penny sales tax is going to be passed again? Because another thing that I also have a passing familiarity with is the current state of the legislature in Iowa. You know that I'm married to the former appropriations chair. One of the reasons that the urgency for this comes up is because no one that I know who is familiar with what's happening in Des Moines, no one has told me that they think that this is going to be passed again. And so I really am genuinely wondering where this assertion comes from.
Well, I will tell you, I have spent a tremendous amount of time researching the penny sales tax. I've read every Des Moines Register article. I've read the newspaper articles across the state. I went out to the Department of Revenue. I read its information. I've Googled it on the Iowa Legislature website. There is such a demand for this money in rural Iowa that the rural legislatures are going to be under tremendous pressure, or those rural schools are not going to have money to keep up with their own infrastructure needs. Now, I am not a fan of a sales tax. I think it's regressive, but this one, as I said, does provide a little bit of property tax relief, so we're just going to have to disagree, and I see it being extended.
So my response would be the reason there is no urgency is because the exact opposite of what you're saying is true. The rural schools aren't growing and don't need it as quickly as we do. And that's been what I've learned through talking to people, that's why the legislature does not have a sense of urgency. Iowa City Community School District is exceptionally situated. Like I think we already said, we're growing second fastest in the state. That's not the case for rural districts. They don't have the same need. A lot of them have banked money that they can't even spend. We, on the other hand, are desperate for that. And that's why this bond fills in a gap that I would agree with Ms. Dvorsky. I don't see the legislature filling.
And I think, you can look at the history over the last several years with the allowable growth, not following their own rules, not funding schools in time, not funding them at all some years. And it's created a great deal of uncertainty for our district. It's caused a lot of angst for planning and being able to hire teachers. And so for us to rely on the state legislature to come to our rescue on our own facilities is not a good idea. And I think as a community, we locally have this opportunity to speak up and say that public education matters here. We are going to fund our schools to the best of our ability. We're going to provide for our students and our teachers because they matter. They are the future. And so we have to do that as a community. No one from Des Moines is going to do that for us, and certainly no one at the federal level. So this is a real opportunity for us locally. And while it may not be perfect, it is essential that we as a community decide if this is a priority for us.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Van Hoosen, and I am a former employee of the Iowa City Community School District. I worked for 8 years working with the district. I have been in Mark Twain for 5 years. I've been in Grant Wood. I've been in many of the buildings in the district. My daughter attended Kirkwood Northwest when it was at its high enrollment times, and West High. I've been in a lot of the buildings. I know a lot of kids that are in many of the buildings. I know that the ADA was passed in 1992. Do I have that right? 25 years ago, 27 years ago? 27 years ago it was passed. I know that you all say you want an equitable learning environment for all students. I know that we have plywood boxes in some buildings and not others. I know that we've built $1 million tennis courts and $1 million football fields, and yet we don't have an equitable learning environment. And you say, well, the priorities will be figured out and it's not perfect and blah, blah, blah. Can you tell me how we know that we are going to be ADA accessible? Because some of the facilities, some of the things that we have built with the money so far have not been ADA accessible.
So I'm not sure what buildings you're referring to. What I do know is the projects that I've seen that followed the FMP actually made the buildings ADA accessible. In addition to that, they create space for flexibility with people with varying abilities. So two separate things. The first thing is ADA accessibility. To allow a student opportunities with any different level of ability, they need to be able to get in the building. So that's a threshold matter. And that's what I think is one of the top concerns we should have as a district. The fact that we still have schools that people in wheelchairs can't get into is pretty crazy. So we have started addressing that. Again, that's what the improvements have done so far. In addition to that, special education students, as I said, they have varying needs. If you've been to the projects that have already been updated, renovated, you will see the spaces that have been created. If you've been out to Liberty High to see the space created for students with varying needs, it's moving. And I have also learned that the same space will be provided at West High, again, only if the bond passes. Similar spaces have been created for the elementary schools. This is, as I said, in my opinion, a desperate need, and the bond is the only thing that meets that need.
I would say Mark Twain really jumps out at me as a school where I was there before, and I walked in after, and I was there the day those kids walked in. And it is amazing to me what seeing a space separate spaces for art and music, and wider doorways, and kindergarten classrooms where children can actually do what they need to do in centers, and having the right space, what that does for children. And it is a huge opportunity, and I think we need to look at it with every project. I think the district has shown that they are doing that. I think we have work to do. I'm not disagreeing with you, Stephanie. I think it is something we have to focus on.
To speak to your point about equity, or your comments about equity, we can look at Hills Elementary, which has been left off the bond. They'll be receiving, I believe, is it 8 new temporary classrooms this fall? So I know that there's a new ad out by the pro-bond folks claiming this bond will bring permanent classrooms to the entire district. It should have in parentheses, except Hills. As far also concerning equity, I know athletic facilities are very important to those who have the money to let their children participate in extracurricular activities, but we have many families in our community who cannot afford to buy shoes, uniforms, equipment required to play. So I don't believe that the first millions of dollars of the FMP should be spent on athletic facilities when not all children will be able to benefit from that. Special education facilities, there's nothing in the bond language for special education. There are no sensory calming rooms. Instead, we're looking at brand new plywood boxes with padded walls. So there's, folks want to talk about equality, but there's a lot of inequality in this proposal.
And if I could just add quickly, the Theodore Roosevelt Education Center is not on the, is not supposed to get money from this issuance either. And truly, when we look at accessibility, let's look at our curriculum too. We're getting Chromebooks. We don't seem to have a plan for how to deal with Chromebooks and kids on IEPs who may not be able to access the curriculum as well with Chromebooks or take standardized tests on those. We have a lot of work to do in this district, and certainly accessibility should be one of the priorities, both in the curriculum and in our physical facilities. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Do we have another question from the audience?
Hello, my name is Tegan. I'm actually a student at City right now. I'm entering my senior year. My question is more directed towards the no side of the campaign. I confess to being kind of undecided at this moment, but my concern is that we're not supporting our schools when, given the circumstances of the state and national government, we are probably not going to be receiving additional educational funding or support from either the Department of Education or the state equivalent. So, trying to phrase my question here. How would you justify delaying giving more aid to, the district at this point when they're probably going to need it in the next couple of years?
Well, if by aid you mean $191.525 million plus interest, first of all, they're not getting all of that money at once. As I said, it's going to come out in 4 or 5, however the district chooses to structure it. City High, if you look at how the district has chosen to structure it, isn't even going to get about half of its money until 3 years from now. So I am not saying the district shouldn't get some reasonable bond passed. My suggestion is, once again, not to vote down a $191.525 million bond, come up with a reasonable bond, bring it back to the electorate, let us vote on something that covers the most important priorities first. I trust that if we have a school board that actually worked well together, we could get a unified board to approve a reasonable bond. So I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that the district not get some money.
Most of the folks on our campaign and most of the folks that we've talked to in the community have actually never voted against a school bond. I have children, and my son, like I said, is at Southeast Junior High, and I see the deficiencies around the district. So I know that there's a need. I agree. There's definitely a need. But again, this is a large amount of money to be put in the hands of a district administration that, for many reasons, we don't have confidence in. So we'd like to, and yes, they've said that they've proven themselves by coming in at budget with the first part of the facilities master plan. Well, yeah, continue to prove yourself. That's a good thing with smaller bond amounts.
And with regard to on time and under budget, apparently that just means a heck of a lot of change orders. If you go out in the district, there are many.
So again, we're hearing about the hypothetical smaller and additional bonds. There was a candidate, Director Liebig, who ran on the platform of Saving Hoover and who repeatedly talked about additional smaller bonds. So he was on the board for 2 years. He never presented a comprehensive alternative to this bond. So I am frustrated by the repeated suggestion that this is all we have to do. Let's just come up with a different one. Again, the board didn't come up with that. The community did. We were at the meetings. We spent hours doing it, thousands of hours working on this. So I don't understand why or how it would be possible to just turn around and come up with a new one. I don't see that that is possible. The other thing is, in response to Mary, the bond has to be rolled out in 2-year, what is it called? 2-year segments, because there's an expiration on the money. It has to be spent within 2 years. So that's not some kind of sneaky strategy. That's literally how the bond has to be paid out. And again, the schedule is not sneaky either. It's right here, and it does matter that it's on time and under budget so far. I think that that is exactly what we can count on. And to say we should make them keep proving it, what are we doing in the meantime? I mean, who's waiting? Who can wait for these improvements?
And I just add, at West High, yes, there were tennis courts done first, because you had to do the tennis courts before you could do the gym, before you could do the cafeteria, before you could do the HVAC. So it's not as simple as just, well, we shouldn't be doing that first. There's a reason behind the design of many of these projects. And so I think it's important to remember that we're not just choosing certain things over others. There's a method to how the process works.
Next question, please.
Name is Caroline Dieterle. One of the things that bothers me is that I know myself that the bond money must be used only on buildings and facilities. It can't be used for any operating expenses at all. And the new buildings are going to require staffing. And meanwhile, as people have noted about the falling support from the state and federal levels, I think that we can probably anticipate that we're going to have to do something to make up the difference, to be able to do that. And what are we going to do? Are we going to pass more of the cost on in levies in the property tax, or are we going to close some of the older schools to try to consolidate our administration of the costs?
What I would say to that is we are a very fortunate district. We are the second fastest growing district. We're growing at an average of 300 students a year, but we're also outsourcing about 300 kids a year right now to surrounding communities. And part of that is our overcrowding, parents and families choosing to go to schools where their kids can be inside the building and have maybe different opportunities. So I think just by moving the bond forward, doing the renovations and the additions that we so desperately need, we will see an increase on top of what we're already seeing every year. And so, and with each child, obviously comes funding, and with each amount of funding comes the ability to, in our general fund, to pay for teachers. So I would argue that by not making our improvements, I think we're at risk of not being able to maintain the current level of staff, certainly not having the space for the teachers that we have. And so I guess I would say it makes it even more critical when it comes from a staffing standpoint to make sure we have the facilities in place.
And what Kate's referring to is open enrollment. We lose students to neighboring districts that have bond-funded facility upgrades. We lose people to Solon, to Clear Creek, Amana, to College Community, because they did pass bonds to upgrade the facilities, and their facilities are better than ours. We also have overcrowding. So that's a double whammy against our school district, and it costs us millions of dollars every year. If we can become more competitive with those neighboring districts by passing the bond to update our facilities, we won't lose as many people, and we won't have the overcrowding.
And I would add the tax rate in all of our neighboring districts is higher than ours. Clear Creek, Solon, College Community, Linn-Mar, Cedar Rapids, we have the lowest tax rate in our area.
I share your concerns about whether small schools are going to be considered to be viable. I personally consider them to be viable. One of the reasons I share your concerns is that I was at a district parent organization meeting last school year where Craig Hansel, our district CFO, gave his presentation. And frankly, coming from a company that engaged in needs-based selling, his presentation sounded like a sales pitch to close small schools. He spent a lot of time talking about how inefficient they were. So I raised my hand and I said, "Are you telling us small schools are going to close?" And he repeatedly said, "We're going to let the community decide." I have significant concerns with this vague on-ballot language because there is no specific dollar amount allocated to a school at a specific location, that what we're going to hear is needs-based selling to close those small schools. Second, I would say I brought the enrollment report for this year. The district does a survey of families open enrolling out of the district. The number one reason was I feel class sizes are too large. They didn't get a tremendous response on their survey. I think they should probably reach out more to get a better response. The second reason was I feel that the schools are too large. And the third one was I want my children to enroll in the homeschool program in another district. I think we actually have more than 300 people open enrolling out. That's a huge concern. Money's walking out of this district. And you wanted to add something, Martha?
And also, from what I understand, most of the children, or a large number of children that are open enrolling out of the district are special needs and special education children. And there is, again, no allotment for special education facilities or like I mentioned, the sensory calming rooms, those kind of spaces. We need those in our schools. We need to support all of our families. And yeah.
Hi, I'm Eric Johnson. I'm a parent at Twain Elementary. I had a question that I wanted to, I'd like to hear answers from everybody, but this is primarily addressed to the folks on the vote no, because it concerns some statements that they've made. What I would ask is that we've heard some about having a more reasonable bond and a smaller bond with alternately either a series of bonds or maybe one slightly smaller and followed up. The details have been somewhat vague. But what I would ask, especially given that you all have identified the need to revisit Hills as part of a reason to vote against this bond, and given that people have mentioned the possible need for another elementary school in the northern part of the district, what I would ask is, what would you consider a reasonable bond? What is a regional, in terms of projects? What would we address first in terms of this regional bond, more reasonable bond? And how do you see the new board coming in, prioritizing putting that new bond together along with the other important work it needs to do in terms of reducing the achievement gap and reforming special education and things like that?
That's a really good question. So because we are a school district that is governed by a board, certainly that is a decision that would be left up to the board. I do have some concerns about what the Iowa legislature is going to do. As everyone knows, it's governed by Republicans now. I suspect that their next push is going to be for charter schools and vouchers, and we're going to have to do some work to decide how we're going to respond to that concern. So we may not end up needing as much capacity. Obviously, I live in the Lincoln neighborhood. I would like to see Lincoln and Man address these inner-city Iowa schools. I was disappointed that an earlier change to the facility master plan took out over 400 seats in Iowa City. But if we do see the population moving north, clearly I think we need to get the new grant built out in, is it by the South Slope? And at some point, I think we're going to have to look at building a second new school. There have been many concerns that not all of the growth in the North Quarter was taken care of. If you go out, and I left a handout out there, you can see the series of 4 bonds that the district has proposed. I certainly think we could take a look at doing the projects that are listed for the years 2018 through 2019. That would leave us with a last principal payment date of 2039 instead of 2042. I think that should be a starting point. Clearly, some work's already been done. If you go out and look at the district documents, Chris Lynch initially proposed a smaller bond, came up with some ideas for projects, and then flip-flopped and decided to go for the whole $191.525 million. So again, I would encourage you to take a look at the handout to see what's already been done, the work that's already been done on this. Martha, did you want to add anything? No, that's okay. So as far as special education, I think we do need to look more at how trauma has impacted children. I do not see those seclusion rooms as effective.
So I'll address both of those. Well, I'll go first, and then I think Kate wants to address another one. The flip-flopping, actually what happened was there was a proposal to consider a smaller size bond, and then the board went out to the community and had multiple meetings and got feedback from the community, and the community decided not to do it. So it wasn't a flip-flop. It was, again, putting the decision in the hands of the community. There seems to be a lot of board administration blaming going on, and I'm not here to defend them. I'm just here to say, as a community member, I felt that I was able to play a role in this process, and I would hate to have all of that work be undone.
And with regard to some of the things that are uncertain for us, right? The voucher system, what's going to happen? I think we need to set ourselves up to be the strongest public school district we can possibly be, because if that is what's coming, we need to give people every reason to stay and be part of our school system. And by not investing in our facilities, we are leaving open the possibility that we will more kids will open enroll out. And as far as saving our neighborhood schools, I consider this bond the way to do that. I worry that if the bond does not pass and we don't have the funds and we're fighting over limited funds and priorities, that's going to change things, and that may put more closures on the table. So if you're interested, and the community said 5 years ago, we want the neighborhood schools preserved. We want Lincoln preserved, and we saw a design for Lincoln last night. So if that's the goal for your communities, to keep your schools, this bond is critical for that to happen.
If you take Horace Mann as your example and you look at the meetings they've had and all of the options they've had about how to make Horace Mann what it can be, and it needs a lot of improvement, none of those things will happen if the bond doesn't pass. Horace Mann's been on the chopping block for years. It will go back on that chopping block.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're out of time for questions. I see there's more people that have them. I think if you come up after this is formally over, our panelists would try to answer. We are now ready for the closing, and each side will have 2 minutes, however they want to divide it, for the closing remarks, beginning with one community, one bond.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here and have this conversation. It's an important one. It's been said that public education is the great equalizer. And what we've really been debating here tonight is whether we should continue investing in the school facilities that deliver that public education in our community. If education is a priority for our community, our facilities should reflect that commitment. I truly believe that healthy school environments are critical to student engagement and success. Natural lighting, flexible learning, inspiring healthy and accessible schools. It's a message to our teachers and students that we as a community prioritize them and education. We have the power to control our own destiny with this vote. While the state and national government is working to undermine and underfund public education, we have the power locally to support our students and teachers by providing them quality learning environments. That will set them up for success. This week, I had the opportunity to meet with a Sudanese woman who moved here with her 3 children, and she told me in somewhat broken English that she came here because your community has a legacy for good education. We have to decide on September 12th if we're going to build on that legacy in our schools or go back to square one and pit neighborhoods against neighborhoods and communities against communities. I'm not interested in competing for limited resources. There's a lot of division in our country and our communities right now, and I really see this school issue as something we should be coming together around. Our students, the youngest, the vulnerable, they can't vote for themselves. So I'm asking you to vote for them, for their futures, and for the success of our community overall. Thank you.
Before I forget, there were several mentions of the upgrades not including sensory calming rooms, and in fact, they do. You just said stop. We have 2 minutes each, I believe.
No, it was 2 minutes together.
Oh, now we know. Well, she took my time.
I took all her minutes. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Well, this is not a choice between you vote for the bond and you support public education, or you vote no and you don't support public education. I firmly support a public education system that is good. I agree with many of the things the One Community, One Bond has said. And so I would encourage everyone to vote no. This is a huge, enormous bond. I think we have to think not just about the impact on the students, but with incredibly vague bond ballot language, we are going to see fights over money. If this passes, there will be people who will be arguing that money should be moved from one school to the other. That is so incredibly unfortunate. Now, I also think we have to think about not just the impact to the students, but what is the impact on our entire community. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have a good retirement plan. They may be supporting adult children. They may have other needs they need to meet. The costs, again, are at least twice what you've been told by the district. We don't know exactly what those costs would be. If anyone has any interest in seeing where I got my numbers, I would be happy to show you when this is over. Martha, did you want to say?
Yeah, so in my opening, I did list a number of reasons why I did not trust the school district administration, and all of those are magnified by the amount of this bond. And I'll reiterate, even just last night at the school board meeting, there was a plan for Lincoln Elementary to have an addition, and that was 30 to 40% over budget. I think that we're going to continue to see those kinds of things throughout the facilities master plan, and the money will have to be moved from one school to another. How will it be paid for? And again, the ballot language is vague. Lincoln Elementary doesn't even have addition on the ballot. So,
thank you all.
Thanks to all of you, those with questions and those with responses, for an informative session. We also want to thank the Press Citizen, Iowa City Channel 4 for covering tonight's event. Rebroadcast of this will run on Iowa City Channel 4, Cablevision, North Liberty, and North Liberty TV until the vote. Good night.